Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And we are after the Pluto talisman that I did. And you know that Pluto is sitting pretty in a brief sextile with Neptune retrograde and Uranus retrograde. Um, so after kind of doing that talisman, I was listening to a testimonial of someone who survived the human trafficking. And um, midway into the interview, I was getting kind of like a download that is the fluid. And so, you know, that most everything I do right now is while having a back to sender or energy stuff to do with eliminating stuff that you know, stuff that are sent to me. And and I felt it like waves. So I know that Saturn is in Pisces, and I felt like when I'm sending back to sender, it's kind of like no, it's kind of like I'm sending it back to sender, and I'm sending like waves, and then I got another download about the fluid. So the fluid is basically when we talk about Pisces, but I got it to Pluto in Pisces because right now we have Neptune in Pisces and it's about to finish up, and now we have Saturn in Pisces. But in 20 years, we're going to have a Pluto in Pisces. And what I got about the fluid, first of all, Pluto in Pisces is going to be the power of the ocean. So if Neptune is kind of like dissolving and blending and surrendering, so surrendering into the power of the waves, Pluto is going to be the power of the waves, okay? We talk about Pluto in Pisces was the romantic era where people began to romanticize being at the ocean. And if you live anywhere like in the Middle East or something like that, you wouldn't understand a thing. You'd have to travel to, let's say, Northern Europe and watch the ocean. Okay, when I was in the Netherlands, then you see a foaming gray monster, okay? And it's looking at you and you're looking at it. And maybe in the summer you have some, beach, but that's not, you understand the romantic era when you are in this location and you watch a foaming gray monster, kind of with the waves and stuff, and you understand what was the concept of the romantic era when they began to romanticize being at the beach during those waves. So with Pluto, it's going to be the power of the waves. And when we talk about the fluid, Pluto is going to, in Pisces, is going to purge the pollution. Wherever Pluto is at, it's purging the pollution. For example, the talisman I made, it has Venus, a Venus hour with Venus on the 22nd degree in Capricorn, which is kind of like a dead sign in that house. And, and Saturn is like badly aspected in the 10th house, but there was a lot of Jupiter on. The moon was in the 7th house. Like, it was not an ideal election. But what I did with that is basically the purging of that fluid, the pollution that basically is washed away by the fluid. And so you see that is, when you have a once in a 248 years 0 degree Aquarius talisman, you do that talisman, you find a way to work with it. Okay, so it's a different point of view to, like, the Thema Mundi, where you have a window of opportunities and that is a bit bigger. Here you work with what you have and you remediate. Okay, and so the download that I got about the fluid is how it's about washing away all these really atrocities that we are living in, that create ocean pollution. And now that was something that when we talk about emotions en masse, like the ocean, because I was talking about the well water today, but the emotions en masse and people feeling complete surrender, had the testimony of the woman I was listening to is in soft underbelly, something like that. Her name, I think, was Clara. I need to check, okay? And she just so candidly, authentically, and openly and powerfully speaks about her experience and about the way that somebody, I don't remember if it was even her mom or somebody who sold her virginity when she was young, and the parents were like addicted to drugs that would make people really do anything, to get the next, the next fix. And if you think about drugs as Neptune, and you think about the power of drugs or what it makes you do as Pluto, right? So those experiences, like, she discusses about being a child in the street, and regardless of gender, there's nothing free, and the price that a child pay is basically being molested, being raped. And so the fact that there are en masse people that experience en masse that such helplessness, this creates tremendous pollution of the bodies of water that are the ocean water. Okay, now you have to connect the fact that while she wasn't describing anything like Anneke Lucas, she was describing the brainwashing and the programming, but you have to understand that those things are used to create sexpionages. Okay, they use, if she talks about, for example, being with a group of like rappers that they wanted to rape her basically, and she said, okay, I'll just freshen up in the bathroom, and she went through the back door and she took their car, and they were like, you took your car, all that stuff in the car, and those stuff were like weapons, drugs, and whatnot. And she had to have another person helping her, but that person was also molesting her. And then when by the time she had a daughter, so she was afraid that will happen to the daughter as well. So you see how and this is one story in an ocean of stories, and that is not unlike the Sedna story. And I think Pluto in Pisces is going to play a lot like Sedna's story, because there's very much the Sedna that was drowned into the ocean because nobody could accommodate for her, and she was just like a free woman, okay, a free girl, and then a free woman. And she held a standard for respect that nobody could accommodate for. And then the story is that you have to appease Sedna, otherwise you would not have seafood. And for Inuit culture, they relied on seafood. So when you think about the fluid and how the fluid is basically washing away pollution. You think about, the cities that tsunami strikes. For a while, nobody has any power on, and that means pollution is turned a notch down. You think about COVID, that was a military operation according to Dutch official, but you think about the fact that, wild animals began to stray in the city streets, and pollution went down. So you think again about this connection between Neptune having to surrender something, having to experience that loss, and going viral, and you think about Pluto having the power of rejuvenation of nature, or the power of rejuvenation of the ocean water. So we cannot think about rejuvenation of the ocean water without thinking about gigantic disaster, okay? And that's the fluid. So when you think about all these people experience that much helplessness, and Neptune is a very manifesting planet. when I was talking about the children with satanic ritual abuse and how that manifests in A bomb, then those situations where people are drugged, and if I go back to the testimony that I listened to, so she talks about not sleeping for days because she was drugged by force so that she will be like raped and then bring the money. This is Neptune levels of, ocean pollution, right? This is, if you think about a flood hitting the entire city, that makes sense, right? And I don't mean it like from a biblical point of view. I mean it by understanding what Neptune rules, and that's that state of dream state, but also that tremendous helplessness, and how nature tends to correct for itself, okay? So think about giant waves. Saturn in Pisces is already bringing the flood. And this is, it looks bad when you talk about pandemic, for example, military operation or not, it looks very bad. But when you think about, having a winter shelter that when it's above 0 degrees, because it is a COVID shelter, okay, because it's a Ministry of Health shelter, or somebody that wanted to quit drugs suddenly being quarantined, and so mint essential oil. Okay, she would like, I wish I would have just like gave her a bottle of it. And you think about those things and you understand that there's this interconnectedness. And so, and she even describes having funding nothing but her cross for the things that were taken from her, and having an NDE, all things Neptune, when you think about this. And when we're talking about the flood, we're talking about really washing away. It's not like washing away the sins or this or that. It's like there's just this tremendous helplessness that one feels washed away, one feels drowning in pollution. And that's given Pluto Pisces, okay? So Saturn in Pisces is kind of like a reality check to, hey, what's in the world? What's in the world? Because the situations are just so fucking intricate. I recall, I'm half Dutch, and when I first heard about the story of Joris Demming, then I thought like, oh my god, like that's fucking horrid, and like everybody's corrupted, everybody's this, everybody's that. When I learned that that's the children that grew up to satanic abuse and nobody came to save them, I'm like, okay, this is heavy. Okay. this is heavy. And you grow to think about like, okay, but would it be like more humane for them to die? And you think about the stories about the guillotine, it's like that's humane death, but here it's like it's mercy killing. Okay. And with Neptune, the manifesting power of Neptune is such that it manifests miracles, and those miracles, they don't always look like what we want them to look like. If I think about the fact that I have been, talking about 2030 a lot, and what are we going to do about it, and at the same time, I understand that this is where many things become a pandemic right now, and a lot of people get what we are talking about. Like a lot of people know what's energy. A lot of people, like people literally talk about spiritual war. Now, okay, imagine those that have been dealing with that since 2007 or 2017 or 2019 or even 2021, okay? So that is kind of another thing where the fluid is. Now I'm getting like an earthquake because I was digging the half moon within rocky soil. I was really, really enjoying that. It was next to a hospital, and then it was a little bit of a hill, and there were trees to the other side, but then there was this completely like nothing was growing there, and I decided to dig in a half moon right before I did the Pluto talisman. So the experience of digging was so spot on. And I began to look like at the skies and at the city, and there's just something so satisfying about digging that half moon and excavating like the stones and the bigger stones, trying to get the stone out, and how much big of a stone can I get out. It's like while having those attacks that I'm like somehow with my consciousness I just like create havoc. I don't know, to bring back the havoc to those who try to like put me in those places. And I was just getting like the Uranus part of the equation, which is kind of like an inner earthquake, which is in the soil. I think about rocky, like the rocks and stone, rocky soil or rocky land, and that is just something he was creating the fluid. I don't understand it. Okay, it's just something that you do. When you begin to work with nature, you begin to connect things that you didn't know are connected. And when you have astrology, that's even better, because the bringing in of the fluid, we change things in the soil, we change things in the water, and we're bringing in the fluid to wash away all the helplessness. Just to be working today in my neighborhood, and every once in a while I have to educate another man on the nature of like life. Okay. What the funny thing we had, that in Israel we had 7 October. I know it's not anywhere near Palestine, blah 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 blah. Okay, that's not what I'm not here coming to say. Oh, sorry me. It's just like that was a trauma. Okay, people were kidnapped and tortured and raped and ritually sacrificed to whichever horn gods or whatnot. And there was this Arab person coming with a van, and he looks at me, and I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And it's like starting to fight. Just like then he said, "If you don't want me to look, cover yourself." I'm like, "You cover yourself." And then I literally shouted at him, just like, "Yeah, well, you know what happened when you do that to the women and so on, and then you guys get killed by the hundreds." And then we somehow toned down the conversation, and he just said, "Well, it's just like going over there." And I said, "Well, you respect my space, it's no problem." He said, "Well, if you want me to move the car, it's okay." And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, just respect my space. Everything will be fine." But I was just thinking about the situation. And that kind of reminded me when I lived in like Gimel, which is another neighborhood, and how my body was so tense from that. And like those tense conversations where people have like a really weird mindset around wealth while I'm creating wealth. Okay, I'm building the half moons that bring in the water, that bring in vegetation, that bring in food. They can bring in more food for the kettle. That can bring in life that is easier. It's like that was not a desert, but it culturally needs to change. And I was talking about the Scorpio, the well water, but now it's kind of like that brings in the fluid in the best of senses, but the fluid is also washing away all the human trafficking mindset that's been around, okay, and it goes together with the drugs. um, it is washing it away, and it's not a bad thing. If I go back to where I was in Netherlands and I was just using mint essential oil, okay, nothing fancy, you can get it at every drugstore, and suddenly have my roommate was telling me, hey, your oil, your minty smell, like I smell in my nostril, because she was doing cocaine. And she was like, what's that smell? What's that thing? It helped me smell in my nostril. I think I was giving her a couple of drops or something. I don't remember, because I was so super exposed to all kind of, I was so hypersensitive. My nervous system was so sensitive, to be very exact. Netherlands, I would have Uranus in the 12th house, and that was kind of like a 12th house place. And around her, I would get so super sensitive, but I really, really tried. And because she had a lot of energy, but also a lot of trauma, I guess. And I was super sensitive to that. But then when she smelled the mint, it was kind of like trying again to quit and so on. So you see how like the fluid is really also for the people who feel like they're drowning in something, okay? And it brings in cleansing, purgatory experiences, where a lot, but I take a look. I remember it's like I was digging the half moon, and the rocky soil. Get us to move around the rocky soil, and I found that the soil is very fertile. Okay, it's just a rocky soil, and there's something there that it's not shaking the ground, but it's creating transformation on a cellular level of the nervous system of the world, in a way, because Pluto is also trining Sedna and accommodating for Sedna. Okay, accommodating for a structure that can hold the water, the evergreen forests. And you know, the evergreen forests are connected with the golden ages, but before that, there's the flood. And now I am tempted to go to the biblical story. Not that I'm such, I'm relatively a heretic, but I think it describes that quite well, where people were putting, it's not about sin, okay? It's not about, oh, there is some God that you this, that you that. It's like, let's just simplify that. Think about nature and think about what Neptune rules. So it rules drugs, it rules helplessness, it rules medication, it rules miracles, it rules Jesus, yes, it's true. But it also rules the experience of being crucified and helpless and misery. But it also rules liquid assets and gigantic wealth. Okay. Think about bringing in the flood. Think about making it rain versus bringing in the flood. Okay, I say what I said. And so when it comes to creating whole placeholders for forests, that's bringing in the flood. That's not gigantic wealth. That's not making it rain. That's bringing in the flood. And when culturally we talk about golden ages, we have to let go of anything human trafficking, anything exploitative towards children, towards women, but also towards men, towards boys. Okay, that's the meaning of bringing in the flood. And you think to the rainforests and the way that the rainforests were treated, or the people of the rainforests were treated, it's giving the flood, okay? because the rainforests are still there, but the flood is coming to wash away. And I dare say Nam, and the crimes that happened there, um, and so we gotta have forests surviving the flood. But there's something about the flood that makes the water sustain and permeate into the depth of the soil. When you have placeholders for water, then the fluid is absorbed within the very starving soil, where in the past it wouldn't be. That is permeating to the depths of deep, and the seeds that are still there for even hundreds of centuries begin to emerge. And that's given me a perspective about what I'm doing as well. Because I was, it started with the rain. It started with fresh water. It started with placeholders for trees. It started with me living in an apartment where there was something really weird with the water. And let's just say, I think he was trying to make me offer him services. That obviously that I was not going to go there. Better for him. I mean, like, I could get triggered and slaughter us. Like, really, that's PTSD, dude. You could get murdered. You can never expect if I would freeze or slaughter you. Like, whatever. But the thing is that I was looking for a way to water the soil without having to work so hard. And then I ran into the half moons and I was like, oh, that's desert area. Deforested Sahara that way. And at first it drenched things from like the lineage, the this, the that. But now that I'm working like outside the city or almost outside the city, not just like in the neighborhood and stuff, then that perspective of the flood, and when I think about what I wash away, even with the power of my consciousness, which I never considered that I have, okay? It's like I wash away waves upon waves of that dumbfuckery, okay? Whether it's trafficking, traffickers, like all of that, just wash it away with the flood. And I also understand that the half moons in the soil outside the city, they're not bringing in the rain. They're not even building just a forest. They're bringing in the flood. Because there's a reason why it's been a desert holistically. I guess the Christians would call it sin, but I don't like this word because that, let's just say, extramarital sex is sin to Christians. Or, if you listen to Emily Harper, you are informed of religious trauma. And I just, that's why I don't use the word sin. But the thing is that when we talk about perpetual helplessness and people feeling like, shaking like a leaf, the way I think her name is Clara that described that, then, and again, this is everyone, okay? Then washing that away with the flood is necessary to bring in, it's not just the fresh water, but the golden ages, the evergreen forests. And that is what I do. I guess in that sense, I'm bringing in the flood. Neptune is about to go to my second house, which is house of skill, values, and I'm creating, like, I'm working on barren land. It's not a barren land, it's just the structures, the architecture changes barren land. That's the Pluto. The architecture changes barren land to fertility, rejuvenation of, okay, with the soil and the rocks and the mountains and the water. And that's not just bringing in the rain, is a bringing in, is a fucking flood. And that's powerful and it's very moving for me. Um, and you know, I was one day when I was walking to the property, I saw that there was like a female energy that I didn't understand if she was a sister of somebody or a spouse of somebody, or I think she was not the mother, it's like either the sister or the spouse. And she was trying to like tell me like how emotionally overwhelming it is to be around me. And she took me to so like I was going to the soil where the property at, and the experience was that of gigantic wealth. It's like you're ushering to gigantic wealth. And I had the experience of gigantic wealth. There was a little bit of fear later, but at first it was like just an experience. It was kind of like, I don't know, the first thing was like Switzerland and doing a ski in Switzerland or stuff like that. But really gigantic. I was like just sitting on something beyond what you can describe. And that was the experience. I have no idea who, like, why, okay? And I was working again more on the soil. And I was able to be on the property and work on the soil, and the understanding that, and she told me, you bring in the flood. So there was something she sensed for sure, and I don't quite identify who she, like, have a premise, but it's like in energy form. And she told me, you bringing in the flood. And emotionally, like, that it was, I think both me and her understood that I'm bringing in the flood. It feels like drowning also for the people around me, and that's why it's difficult for me even to find housing, I guess. Got it? I'm gonna tell you a little story for when I was in Kikar Medina later. And and now I get it, because it's like I'm bringing in the flood and they have to deal with with the purgatory part, because and then we both realized that the flood is gigantic wealth, or I think I realized after hers, like she understood that I'm sitting on gigantic wealth. And it's a different type of wealth, like it's something that I cannot describe even. And I humble, I make for the welfare outgoing, it's like 800 euros. That's it, half of that I pay the rent. It's not about numbers in the bank account. It's about bringing in the flood. Okay, it's about making what seems like a desert evergreen forest. But I guess it's even more than that. This is just something I'm not aware of just yet. It's all that I do with my talismans and energy, but the actions and the water spends upon cooling and masonry change and MQ ultra gavig. Okay, there's like, and the fact that it feels like it's the flood, you feel like you're drowning in it, but you're embarking on a whole new world. Now it clicks, because I understand that my energy and where I am in my Pluto square and my Neptune square, I understand why it's difficult with the housing. So there's the things that's going on, like in the world, it's washed with the flood. But it's also like I'm bringing in the flood. So the containment is something that I'm still building in the soil in the mountains. And I want to tell you a story. I was in Kikar Medina, and there was another energy with me, this time a man. I think around his 30s, mid 30s. And so I don't remember what was it that I was doing. I was just strolling around, and either I needed to get my teeth done or I was going to a pedicure, and I was strolling around, and then he was like annoyed by me, and I'm like, why are you annoyed by me? It's like I don't know, just someone that doesn't try to be a billionaire. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be a billionaire. Like, what do you want? And I had, my life have put me in connection with some connection, interaction with some people that were billionaires. But it's like it just happened. Like I'm a human being. I will communicate. If Elon Musk buys X and he puts on eggplant to his employees, so I will react. Okay, I was just the kind of person who would speak up. Um, but that was just a funny thing. Um, because to me it was like I just need like a place to be. And I dealt with people trying to make me small, or stuff like that, or trying to make my energy small. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I bring in the fluid. They are overwhelmed and drowning because they have been drowning in the intricacy of their life circumstances. And to me, I change what, like, if something bothers me, I change it from the core. And it bothers me to the core, right? So in that sense, the fluid is Neptune level rejuvenation of barren land. For me, I think about Saturn and Neptune going into my second house. I'll definitely be building dams, because Saturn is a structure and Neptune is the fluid. And then you have in the mountains, then of the desert, if you build dams, then instead of having fluids, like we really have fluids in towards the Dead Sea, and if I did like structures there with the stones that we already have, like with everything we have in nature, we don't even have to, I think, necessarily bring anything. It's just to change the fabric of the earth, then we would have everything growing there. And I knew that I meant to do that. I knew when I was first traveling to the Dead Sea, I was like, being told like I'm going to visit here almost every day and so on. And I was shown that the water level are going to raise way above the ground, like the fluid. I was shown that. And then I was seeing like the mountains, like they were like, hold space for us. We are a lush forest. We're a lush forest. We're a lush forest. And I was like beginning to see them because I thought the view is amazing. Okay. But then it's like the mountains were asking me to see them as a forest, as a giant forest. You think about both the Jordan side and the Israel side. And I didn't know what it means, but I'm like, okay, okay. And so, and then when I began to do the half moons and then saw this guy in Texas that's doing dams, I was like, I get it. Saturn is structures and Neptune is fluid. So Saturn, Neptune is kind of like virally building dams across barren land. And that is, and oh, when I was working in the soil, you begin to feel the energy of the place. And there was a lot about the fact that, so many young girls were buried in the sand because they didn't want to be raped for the rest of their life in like forced marriage. So turning the soil, the rocky soil. The thing about Saturn is rocks is something that takes so many years to be created. It's created with inside the earth. And then I was thinking of like removing kidney stones, because and Libra is like balancing. A while ago, there was a person who, at the village that I lived, asked me about kidney stones and the kidneys and what would it mean holistically or astrologically. And I say, well, kidneys, that's Libra, that's, balancing. And you say, well, that makes sense. So he was working with the Jewish Kabbalah or something, and he was changing up the way that he was doing his own medicine. So he works physically on people, and he began to work from the bone to the muscles. So he moved to the muscles, which I found fascinating because Rahu is in Aries, so Rahu is in Mars sign, and Ketu was in Libra, and he was working, I guess, on kidney problems, Libra, tending to the muscles, Mars sign. So that is amazing. And I was just thinking about kidney stones and removing kidney stones. That's how it felt like removing kidney stones. I don't know who has kidney stones, but that was something that was removing, together with the culture of murdering girls when they don't want to marry, a forced marriage. That was so satisfying. I was next to a psychiatric hospital in between neighborhoods, and it was kind of like open field, not really field, it's kind of like a tiny mountain. And I was just digging into the soil, the half moon, and went from this, nothing really grows here to something gonna grow here. And I was moving the rocks. When I was moving the rocks, I was really feeling that in like my lower back, also in my bones. It's kind of like, and I'm thinking about removing kidney stones. Like, I really don't know who has kidney stones. But I think about all the medications that they give there that can build kidney stones. And that was pretty peaceful. Relative to the fact that I bring away, bring away the waters, like it's kind of like with the wave, the power of the waves to bring away all the webs of human traffickers. So I somehow do it with my consciousness. I don't even know how. It's like a miracle that just happened, and I concentrate on that. So that helps me with the weird assaults. That and the rocks, moving the rocks. I was like, moving the rocks, digging into the soil. There's just something so satisfying about that. I cannot even begin to describe that. And how powerful it is to get reconnected with nature. And I love working with the outer planets, I have to say, because with outer planets, there's something, you really feel like you're a part of something gigantic. But now that I understand that, I really understand why it was difficult for me to be housed. So there's the part that's like, oh, woe is me and the world is blah. And, and there's the part I'm doing something about it. Unlike people who are like, find somebody to marry, have so-and-so sex, if they're lucky, good sex, and, raise a family and be exploited by debt, then maybe start a new trafficking business sidekick or something like that. Too Dutch for you, I'm sorry. But the thing is that I'm doing something about it. And when you're doing something about it, you transform, and the place of living also transforms. Okay? And I don't know how my mom houses me right now. But that's the thing, that I'm doing something about it. I'm active about that. And I'm active in the way that, you know, if there wasn't water, if there wasn't enough water to water the crops, I'm bringing in the water. Okay? If they're changing up like the food weird things and putting weird material on it, toxins on it, so that people won't be able to eat, I'm building forests. Okay? If the neighborhood is filled with like traffickers and stuff, I change up the soil. I give talismans to the prostitutes. Um, like I'm doing something about that. Okay? So that creates an energy that is very active, is transformative, and especially now with Rahu still in Aries, but when Neptune goes Aries, you know, I'm less afraid of that now. Because with Neptune, there is a sense of surrendering. For example, the Moon Neptune talisman I ordered went missing in the mail, and they need like the number that she gave, and I still didn't ask her for it. It was like a year probably passed, because she by accident she didn't register it, and so she canceled like the order. Then I ordered some other stuff, but it was really funny because Neptune is about something going missing. So more about that fluid. Definitely, I understand why it was challenging with the housing for me, because it's not just like my standards or this thing, but it's also I'm acting on that. Okay, I'm actually creating the space that I want to be at, and I'm actually taking action to transform the soil. Now you understand that those things are changing up the climate, that the forest changes. When I was going back from digging my little half moon there, it's like it's still living within me. I put a rose there, but I need to water it tomorrow. Or I need to take it to a place where there's water. And it's just like that there's something about the excavation and the digging and the changing up of the ground, where it's like this weird dry things that nothing grows, and you just move things around, and you find really fertile soil and some rocks and stones and kidney stones that you remove. That's how I feel about it, like removing kidney stones. And so the fact is next to a hospital, because I always check the locations and try to see what am I getting from the location as well. It was very quiet, okay, except for me like bringing in the waves of like washing away human trafficking. Oh, and I was thinking about the fact that like, wow, like Like, all the men that put the women, call them crazy and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, like, if you want to be treated in a hospital, you want to be seen as crazy and stuff like that. So you must make sure, because you're going to be prescribed your own medicine. Okay, you're going to be put in those hospitals. You're going to be put in those spaces. Like, if you're going to be put in jail, you better make a jail as a hospitable place. And all the governance issue, like the governance dropping, and infiltration of the cult. And that was like, oh, it's bringing in the fluid. Because I was thinking about that, and I'm tending to that. And I'm like, oh, I'm bringing in the fluid. Like, that's not like you're going to be washed away. That's the old teaching. As I was telling to that man, okay, if you like mistreat the women, there's nothing we can do, but you're gonna be washed away with the fluid. So that is another thing that comes up. I really like working on an open field, like on an open space, and the changes. So I really love, I'm not addicted to change, but I really love changing up the soil and changing something from the core, and the transformation that comes with it. Because that's actually needed in the world. That's actually needed, and to be acting on the environment that I want to live in. So to create the environment that I want to live in, on a worldly scale. And then I was going back and thinking about the forests and how that changes up the climate. And so how the world is changing, so that in itself can bring in, anomalies in temperature and rain and stuff. And then there is the technology, like the HAARP thingy. So there's the man-made and not man-made, but this is kind of like also man-made, but the antidote to those weird chemicals. Yeah. But that was what I had to say. It's more downloads about the fluid that arrive with this Pluto talisman, and how the fluid washes away what we don't want, okay? Like, the fluid washes away. And he had Neptune in the 10th house for the talisman, so there's definitely the fluid washing away human trafficking. And it's the architecture in the soil, Uranus and Taurus, that's done in remote places in the 12th house, next to like jails or hospitals, stuff like that, that rejuvenates from women being killed and buried in the mountains. Literally Venus 22 degrees Capricorn in the 8th house, to washing away. Okay, there's the career of bringing in the fluid was really evident in this talisman. So this is taking it from the place where all these women were buried into the mountains, and changing up the architecture in a way that's healthy for the nervous system. And career-wise, it's bringing in the fluid. And then Jupiter would be in the 1st house. So, and Pluto is in the 9th, so it's like an international level, on a global, worldly level. And like rejuvenating the soil from the economies that is based on murdering women who don't comply with sex work, or with marriage that is sex work, or the way where women are, specifically because of Venus, women are murdered in marriages, and bringing in the flood on all those businesses is like the karma Saturn of the 8th house. Because that's when you work with it magically, as the talismanic magic. Okay, that's the difference between a talisman and the mundane. Because Algol on the mundane level will be bodies upon bodies. For the talismanic level is protecting, is shielding from psychic attacks, and so on and so forth.